Well, hello there. I believe that you can all hear my voice, the sound of my strange accent bumbling along on the airwaves. Good evening, everyone. It's a live episode again. There've been a couple of pre-records. Oh no, wait, we did a pre-record last time. No, it was a live one last time, wasn't it? Oh, anyway, oh yeah, it was because we did a page turn of an old report. Anyway, we're back for an even more interactive one now. We are going to be talking about the fact we have a new government. We have new ministers to talk about. Oh, golly. Actually, there aren't that many new ministers to talk about, really. It's just one minister to talk about. And generally, a bit of a discussion about what's next for UK Rail. Before we do that, though, before we get into it, we need to have yes, as I say, a new Prime Minister. Prime Minister Liz Truss of pork markets fame. What a strange and bizarre. We are on the weirdest timeline, folks. Very, very strange. We shall be getting into all of that, but there's going to be a big old pile of news to get through to start with, to just kind of bring us up to speed, including some guest edited news from our correspondent in Vienna. Let's just get into it, shall we? Everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. As the City 225 fades away, I realise that the sound is not coming through my earphones, it's coming through my actual speakers, which is something I can fix right now. So that might have, the intro might have sounded a bit weird there. There we are. Beautiful. There's that. Still a bit strange. Anyway, also I need to get rid of my mouse as well, because we're in game stream mode. We don't want to be in game stream mode. Before we do any of that, I need to dig my Wacom out. Good grief, dust this thing off. I haven't been in here for a while. There's a pile of oatcakes in the way. The Wacom is coming out because, well, there's going to be lots to scribble on, but also because we've got the COVID stats. We haven't looked at the COVID stats for a while. Here they are zoomed in. When was the we last looked at them probably about here, didn't we? Maybe even a bit further back. Well, we've seen that post-strike, or post-first week of strike, they've climbed. You can see the first week of strikes there. I need to add in the next load of strikes, because I think the next session of strikes would be, when was that? Actually, I'm not sure. In any case, we've got kind of these two troughs here and here. Who's in the chat who can point out the remind me exactly what's here. I'll go back and look it up and add some more yellow dots to kind of point out when the strikes have been. But you can see we've got these, the rail, despite the fact that we are running an enormously reduced service, like in some cases it's a 60% timetable. You look to Avanti and they're running even less than that if you count kind of some of the peak kind of key train services running. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Just reminding myself as well. You get the good stuff here in listening to Rail Natter, is that I click the old "We Are Live" and then pin that tweet. There we go. Marvelous. Done. It's done. Yeah. So the key thing, I think, is that we're just bouncing around we're between 95 and. So when we're kind of sitting, when there isn't disruption, when there isn't a reason for the disruption, of which there's a lot of disruption at the moment, the kind of the normal position is between 95 and 100% at this point. Between 95, and that's on average. So that's 95 to 100%. And it's funny, I often hear people going, "Oh yeah, but it's less on other. It's a lot less on other routes." It's like, yes, that means it's a lot more on a load of other routes. If London, which is the high density network, is accounting for is running more empty, then that requires an enormous amount of, bearing in mind how much of the overall ridership, how many journeys on average are happening on the kind of the network southeast kind of area, just kind of London and its surrounds. for the rest of the network, which has a substantially lower density of services, to be realising 100% of pre-COVID ridership means that trains are enormously full outside of London, on average. There are a few that are not. There are a few trains here and there that people anecdotally send me, oh, well, that one's still pretty quiet. But on average, services outside of London are rammed. And we're running a rubbish service. It's just bonkers for anyone to suggest anything other than there is an enormous latent demand for rail travel and we need to fulfil it as quickly as possible. So this idea that the rail industry needs to shrink is baffling to me. There is absolutely zero basis for it in evidence as far as I can see. The revenue, by the way, is plus or minus 5% of ridership. I have had no one accurately explain to me, okay, there's people saying, oh, well, yields and blah and blah. I've not had anyone explain to me why, if revenue is at between 95 and 100%, that means that the industry is making less money. I would understand it if it was something like, the number of tickets only, but we're talking about revenue, which means that's the total cash arriving and landing on the laps of the industry. It's just, seriously strange situation where a lot of propaganda is being used to cut an industry, and a lot of people paid a lot of money are just repeating this nonsense. Very, very worrying. Let's have a look at the bigger picture. So this is when I say bigger picture, I mean like since the start of the pandemic. So you can see, the first year we had a return to almost, a return to 90%, then the drop off. A return to 90%, and not a return to 90% at all. We got to 40%, and then it dropped away. We got up to 75%, and then it dropped away again over in the spring of 2020, or kind of at the end of 2021. And then since the end of 2021, we've just seen a general rise, and we're going to see. If you kind of follow that trend, we're going to be reaching the 100% mark by the end of the year consistently, right? It's a big number. When we see the 100%, that'll be a big number because it'll be very difficult then for people to, if it continues to consistently rise, which I hope it does. I hope it doesn't. We don't see. There's a potential that you could look at that and see that it's actually a curved trend line and it's decreasing again. So we'll see. We'll see. There are various projections you could look at, kind of following this annual trend to see whether it continues to rise or whether it tails off again before the end of the year. But I have to keep reminding people that we're running a reduced service. So anyway, that's the big picture. Interesting stuff. Let us move on to Die Bahnnatte Nachrichten. It's guest edited German news. So the German news. Let's go with the German news. Firstly, yes, Nightjet 2 Electric Boogaloo, the new high-speed-ish Austrian kind of multiple unit sleeper trains. These look very, very tasty. There's loads of pictures. C61 and loads of other people have kind of relayed the fact that there's these fantastic trains running. They just look very nice. The introduction to service was delayed, but these are kind of a fundamental. The first route is going to be Vienna-Venice, which is very nice. But we're looking at Dutch certification. For me, it's like if they can run Brussels, when they if they start running the faster Brussels services, that'll be very exciting. So, sleeper trains. The journey that I did. Oh, shall I get my miniaturized face up in the corner? Hello everyone, I'm here. Look, I'm wearing my usual train spotter t-shirt. Look, isn't that nice? You'll see me in big face when we have the discussion at the end. Once we've hammered through the news, I'm going to try and get the news done by 5:30. We've got 21 minutes. Let's see how we can do. So this is very exciting, and there's lots of interesting stuff. One of the particularly interesting things is these the mini sleeper units that are a bit like those Japanese hotels that are just like a bed with a pod around it. They're pretty nice. I'm very much liking the look of those. The fact that I have work stuff on my phone is incredibly annoying because at this point where I want to just access my phone, it's wanting a password. Fan-dabby-dozy. It's not happening. If someone's trying to message me about something important, it's got to wait till the end of Rail Natter. So that's exciting. The journey that I just did across Europe would be massively helped by some of these sleeper services, it must be said. Let us continue. So that's very nice. Oh, of course, yeah. We have to. So that's some exciting news to start. But let's talk about some sad news. The €9 ticket is the €9 train ticket scheme. Has been binned, it's done, it's finished. There's some very interesting statistics. There's a nice Guardian piece actually that kind of drills into them that's worth a read, and there are a few others as well. Hoyte and a couple of others have picked up the data. So things like, firstly, nearly 2 million tons of CO2 saved over a pretty short period. That's fairly sizable. It's a big old sizable chunk of CO2 emissions. Bearing in mind that HS2s, this is a good thing for people to kind of bear in mind when people talk about HS2's total construction emissions. It's 14 million tons of CO2 equivalent, right? The €9 ticket saved 2 million. So that was over a period of what, 6 months? No, not even that. It was like 3 months. It was a short trial, right? And it saved 2 million tons of CO2. So this is like absolutely critical to the point that I have to make to people when I talk about you cannot look just at construction emissions. You have to think about the bigger picture. Absolutely critical. Oh, there's an interesting point here. We'll get onto we're remaining with the Germanosphere at the moment, but no, I did not hear that the Dutch railway strikes had succeeded. Solidarity to Dutch railway strikers, absolutely. So, what else have we got in the news? Well, actually, there's more to talk about the €9 ticket because, ZDF just kind of commemorated it nicely. F. And goodbye to the €9 ticket. It was 3 months. 3 months, 2 million tons of CO2 saved. 1.8 million, pretty spectacular. We miss you. Your 4 million friends. Oh yeah, the other point was that a fifth of the 52 million tickets sold as part of the scheme were bought by people who did not ordinarily use public transport. And I think that'll be picked up in the next slide here, which the FT kind of dug into the data as well. Actually, this FT article is also good because it's got some nice data visualization. So you can see the introduction of the €9 ticket and an enormous and rapid increase. Up to here, this huge increase in the number, the percentage change. Basically, it saw a near doubling of rail usage as a result of the introduction of this ticket. A near doubling of rail usage, which is indicative of what happens and how much of a pull reduced rail fares can be. Britain should be doing this immediately. There are problems, of course. Germany had some of these problems too, but we would have them more acutely, which is if you introduced a fixed low fare like this, Britain's railways are already chronically full. So there's no space to accommodate 100% more passengers. So, much as I think we should be reducing rail fares, we couldn't do it overnight because you'd just see dangerous levels of overcrowding. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it. We should be policy planning around it. A lot of people were like, I've seen rhetoric saying, oh, well, it didn't really reduce road much. Look at that. Well, the point is that to get a commensurate doubling of rail usage, it only represents a small percentage reduction in road usage because of how much higher roads modal share is. It's like I say, for Britain, where we've got 90% of people and things travel by road, 10% by rail, that means doubling rail only represents reducing road down to 80%. Because, taking 10% from road and putting it on rail is only a 10% reduction of road, whereas it's a 100% increase for rail. So that number, that looks smaller for rail. Really, they possibly should have kind of normalised it or found some way to represent it more accurately, because that's representative of a sizable reduction in mode share thanks to this increase in rail. So fab. This is to rural areas with high levels of tourism. There's some interesting data in the FT article, and you can just Google it by searching, €9 ticket, Financial Times. Do it. Anyway, goodbye €9 ticket. We barely knew ye. Sticking with our chums in the Germanosphere, which is definitely not the way to call the German-speaking parts of the world. But anyway, interesting little sort of fiddles going on in within Germany, within the kind of as part of their legal framework. We've got the Climate Change Act 2008. Germany has a variety of kind of climate protection laws. One of them is essentially is legally mandating the limits that each kind of government department has to meet. Each kind of department has to meet, and of all the departments that are not succeeding in that, transport is one of them. And there's a line. So I believe so. There's a graph here, and the kind of the line, the required reduction to zero is here. The actual projections based on various people are these kind of various people's projections are up here, and you can see that this means that they've had their wrists slapped for this. So they've got a gap. I'm actually using notes for this news article. I never use notes, but they have sent them through. And folks, if you feel like being an international correspondent for RailNet, and you want to just send a kind of a little cluster of things that have happened that are interesting in recent months, then send them on. You can send them to railnatter@garethdennis.co.uk. Email them over to me. That's perfectly acceptable. So basically, they've tried to suggest. So they created a package to reduce carbon emissions for transport. The government department did, and it's led by the FDP is kind of like the centre liberal party, the Free Democrats. It's kind of like more to the centre than the CDU. Call me out if I'm getting my German politics kind of not quite right. Maybe they're about where the CDU are. I think they're kind of they're kind of like, Lib Demi, I believe. I might be wrong on that. Shout at me if I'm wrong on that. I'm behind on the times. Here we are. Yeah, market liberals. Yeah, they're kind of the Lib Dems, and like maybe some like that's what I was kind of pitching at. They're kind of Lib Demi. Anyway, they are. So having put forward this plan, Volker Wissing is the guy who's in charge of the department, who's from the FDP, because they have coalition governments. The package was dismissed by experts. So those projections at the top are the expert projections. They're dismissed as insufficient. Various measures, mostly like cycling, working from home, saving like only 14 million tons of CO2, leaving a gap of 261 million. So like saving not much from like the level we're at now. It's gone to here, or maybe at best case to there, and actually they've still got, well, what is that, 260 million tons by 2030. So the FDP, they're liberating hard. They're pushing for the aims to be able to like basically borrow from other departments who are maybe doing better to backfill the fact they're not succeeding, which obviously totally misses the point. But basically they're about to get sued because there wasn't a legally acceptable set of measures, and it's all getting messy and going up to high courts and just generally being a right old mess. So isn't that wonderful? Good stuff. Good to see that Germany is. There is no cheat code for zero carbon transport. It's hard. The easy stuff does not get you down to zero. You have to do the hard stuff, and that hard stuff is stop people from being able to drive. That's it. Reduce the amount of people who drive, and that requires carrot and it requires stick. Right, hydrogen trains. This is an interesting one because at first when I looked at this kind of piece, I was like, oh well, no, this is not news because the island has been running for ages. But no, this is the first time that the fleet is being rolled out as a purchased hydrogen fleet. So the islands have been running for 3 or 4 years now, but they, in passenger service in Germany. But now they are procuring a whole new fleet. Sort of rather than being a prototype fleet, this is going to be a squadron fleet of like, no, we're just getting hydrogen trains, no biggie now. So yeah, for proper reals this time, and good, fine, exciting, not hugely wonderful. It's fine. It's zero emissions. It's a worse replace. Whether it's actually better than diesel, when you look at the whole big picture, I don't know. But it does solve quite a few problems that diesel has, like the actual. Ignore the CO2 emissions of the whole system, but it gets rid of a lot of the smut, which is obviously good, and a variety of other things. It's certainly clean. It does allow you to create a sustainable system, even if it perhaps isn't quite yet. If this hydrogen is possibly not generated. It's not. I don't think it's green hydrogen yet, but it has the potential to be. But also, you have to be cynical of anything hydrogen because of how much hydrogen lobbying is coming from the fossil fuel industry. So I'm always cynical about hydrogen. I was wary of hydrogen. What else? Yeah, that's right. Kind of a bit off the back of John and I's discussion about Germany. the Swiss industry, the Swiss rail industry, is getting increasingly pissed off at Germany's shoddy rail infrastructure and how congested it is. So there's a route, there's an upgrade required between Basel and Karlsruhe, which is expected, it's kind of not expected to be completed before like the mid-2040s, which will provide a four-track railway, allowing increased tonnages and increased lengths. The Swiss are saying, well, it's not nearly quick enough. And also there's substantial capacity bottlenecks elsewhere. And they're at the point where they're going to actually just enhance the line through France instead and just bypass Germany altogether. So that's nice, isn't it? Really good that that kind of key corridor is being held up. And I have to say that Germany's an issue. I feel like some of the EU attitudes to rail are very much echoed by the kind of the fact that Germany, from a policy perspective, dominates a lot of EU elements. I would say that attitude to rail across the EU is kind of a microcosm within Germany. Germany does some good stuff on rail, sure, but there are so many things that it's behind on. Like actually, it's lots of comparison between the UK and Germany on that front, I think. What else? Yeah, this is an interesting one. So you remember from RailNatter last year, I spotted some platform edge lighting, and I was kind of like, okay, yeah, if it's something that improves safety and just kind of gets people to think a little bit or look down and look at their feet to make sure they're not tripping, great. And so they are rolling. It looks like they are rolling this out on S-Bahn platforms, which is kind of cool. So it's in. They're trying it out in Southcross Südkreuz station in Berlin, and I think they're intending to kind of roll it out on a trial basis. But yeah, so that's quite interesting. It's quite it's interesting to see whether this actually sort of works. Yeah, so that we'll see. It's good to have it in service. A problem we have in the UK is that we don't trial enough stuff like this. Just trial it, just chuck it in, trial it. As long as it's not actively going to be causing harm, just get it in, trial it, try stuff out. We never do stuff like that. And kind of on a similar theme, Talgo has provided ICE its first, or Deutsche Bahn its first level boarding long distance trains. So S-Bahn is mostly, if not entirely, level boarding. Regional trains are often not, and the long distance services are absolutely not at all. Until now, and Talgo, which is the only operator that offers a level boarding solution for 760 mil height platforms, which is the standard European, one of the I'd say probably the most common standard European platform height is 760 millimeters. And the ICL coach, as it has been named, I believe it's going to just be added into Deutsche Bahn trains. Into ICE trains to provide a level boarding solution within their trains. This is exciting. I'm very pleased about this. So, forgive me. This is, no, it's not. They are building the whole lot. So they are doing the whole train. Yeah, sorry, forgive me. Talgo are doing the whole train. I bet that was controversial with Siemens. Oh. In any case, there we go. ICL. Talgo were the only manufacturer who bid for it because of the 760mm requirement. So Talgo are doing what Stadler are doing in the UK, Talgo are doing across Europe, which is saying, well, okay, none of the other operators are interested in providing level boarding. Okay, we'll take it, we'll do it. Very cool. I'm gutted that I'm not going to Innotrans because I'd love to go and have a look at this and rave about it because this is the future, folks. It really is the future. So absolute kudos to Talgo on that one. Yeah, very exciting stuff. Where are we? Lots of chat. Sorry, yes, they're fixed set push-pull trains. Yeah, thanks, Xander. I got the wrong end of the stick on that one. I don't know why I thought they were inserting one. I was thinking about something else earlier. They're not inserting it. It's a full push-pull set that I presume will have like a nice big sort of one of the, I've lost the name. Not a Taurus. What's the other one? The Siemens, big Siemens logo at the front, pulling it, and they'll be very happy. If anyone wants to learn more about level boarding, then former Crow, for example, you're asking if there's a practical way to retrofit level boarding onto platforms in the UK. You don't need to. Go back to my level boarding episode, which is well worth a watch on the subject of level boarding. Let's have a think. Yes. So I'm just going back through. I've had some notes up, but now I can go back through and see all of these red names that have been appearing. The FDP are the only ones in the current government coalition that blocked the speed limit on German autobahns. Oh yeah, that's the sort. Classic liberal move. Lovely job. Pen mark, bigger, tech issues, watching small screen, hard to see. There aren't many pen marks, don't worry. Yes, right, lovely. Okay, I shall continue. Tracks, Vectron is what I was thinking of. Whatever they're going to pull them around with, it'll be a nice big train, and it'll look nice. So, let's continue. Yeah, so Talga gives IC level boarding, the ICL level boarding, marvellous. Meanwhile, on other railways, this is a thread by Mani Barberin, Crutches and Spice on Twitter. Actually, no, not Crutches and Spice on Twitter. Imani_Barberin on Twitter. Imani gave us this thread of misery, which a lot of people will be familiar with in the UK for kind of really miserable accessibility experiences. So basically, just it's a classic thread of misery of trying to deal with Amtrak trains, which are already a hopeless mess accessibility-wise anyway. But trying to book the reserving accessible seats, and you have to reserve the seat now, so change the rules. It's just excluding more people from rail travel. And likewise, in the UK, here's the Disability News Service pointing out that GTR, Thameslink, have been running services without enough staff to comply with their current DOO agreement. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? So driver-controlled operation or driver-only operation, but certainly driver-controlled operation is supposed to have staff on hand to be able to help with accessibility issues. It's part of the agreement, part of the deal. And that hasn't been happening, which means that GTR, so that's Govia, Thameslink, but also I think Southern and Great Northern, all within this one real kind of train operator. So they've been breaching the Equality Act for more than a decade. So that's great. Will they see any consequences to this? Absolutely none. None at all. None whatsoever. And indeed, all this strike stuff, and we'll get to strikes a little bit more later, but all the strike challenges are that not that I'm one to. I mean, the HRC is a bad organisation. This is a bad organisation. No, not a good organisation, because it's been entirely taken over by transphobes. But and also their racial reports have been problematic, and it's a real mess. The last bastion about disabled rights, they have made a good point. Sometimes an organisation that is best to not listen to anymore says a thing that's worth paying attention to as it kind of collapses in on itself. And this thing is pointing out to government's proposals. By the way, government is proposing to close all ticket offices. They're currently following the close all ticket offices trajectory on their thoughts and plans. I've seen GBRTT documentation which says, oh yeah, we're closing all. We are hoping and intending to close all ticket offices. It's like, okay, cool. What do you do about people wanting to access services for where do people go to for accessibility services, for being helped onto a train or speaking to someone to sort a problem out? Yeah, not ideal. So yeah, the ABC, Association of British Commuters, is pointing this out. They've written a letter. No action happened. Obviously, it's getting totally ignored. Not good. Okay, let's change the subject and talk about Jack Elliott. Yeah, they are also the ones who declared that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but let's not go there. It's a long, complicated story. Xander saying that Talgo locos have been ordered to go alongside, and the Vectron dual modes are going to be used as a stopgap for those ICLs. Interesting. Thanks, everyone. Any other country thinking of closing ticket offices? I don't know, actually. I don't know. Anyway, Professor Richard Betts is here, an IPCC author on various bits and pieces within the documentation of the IPCC. Julia Hartley-Brewer, everyone's favourite something, claimed that extreme weather is not increasing, which is a hilarious thing to claim in and of itself. But it's just not true. There is, if we look, we can see here that there is not a single. So we're looking for blues. So here, if you want to look at it, there's a nice graphic here showing where there's extremes are potentially reducing, right? So we're looking here at across the whole country here, across the whole planet, sorry, and we're looking at so this one's hot extremes, Professor Richard Betts publishing a paper in this. We're looking for blue hexagons for anywhere where there's been a decrease in the likelihood of high temperature extremes. That's a 0. I should have got my buzzer out for this, shouldn't I? Yeah. Thing is, if I play the buzzer, you don't want to see that. If I play the buzzer, people won't. It'll be very loud. That's the only problem. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably quite loud, isn't it? Yeah, so that's a 0. So if we go here and look at heavy precipitation, have there been any place? We're looking for yellow. We're looking for yellow on this map to see if there have been any areas where there's been a decrease in the number of... There's limited data and low agreement in some places, but we're looking for a place where there's evidence to back up a decrease in extremes. And again, that's a 0. That's a 0. And if we look to agriculture and ecological drought, there's a 1. There is. We're looking for a green, and there is a green here, up here in this area, which is what is that? Northern Australia. Northern Australia. Here there is actually a reduction, so that's 1. So that's fine. That's yeah, we can accept that. Lovely, marvelous. So this is. So basically, yeah, as I've been saying a lot, as I'm sure you've heard me saying, like, climate change leads to more extremes in all directions, particularly for the UK, with its weird... It's already got a weird climate. TfL. The TfL deal. So, the TfL deal has been reached between Sadiq Khan and the former... Transport... Secretary of State for Transport. It's not ideal. The former Secretary of State for Transport was again asking and talking about driverless trains, but there's a big funding gap, and it's forcing. It's a deliberate political move to force Sadiq Khan up against the unions. It's trying to turn the unions and Sadiq Khan against each other, which is very annoying. So the point being that Sadiq Khan has been forced to dig into pensions. And pensions is the one thing you do not want to dig into for any workers, but particularly London transport workers. Don't touch their pension. I've heard multiple conversations of drivers or staff talking about this stuff and overhearing, I don't really mind as long as he doesn't touch my pensions. Don't touch the pensions. And that's what is being forced onto Sadiq Khan. It's a deliberate political move. And hopefully the unions don't hold it against Sadiq Khan, they hold it against government instead. But anyway. So, talking of TfL, some good news actually. I've kept yet another dodgy TfL deal in here because part of the deal is, make sure you deliver Crossrail. It's like, yeah, they are. What are you on about? But, talking of make sure you deliver Crossrail, by very, very soon, November the 6th, in fact, so that's a month and a bit away. We're halfway through the month and a half away. They're going to be... Bond Street Station should have opened by that point. In fact, Bond Street Station is supposed to be opening in a couple of weeks. But we should be having Bond Street Station. And, mid-October for Bond Street, I think. But November the 6th, we'll have full kind of almost full Crossrail running. We'll have through services. So Reading, Abbeywood, direct, and Shenfield, Paddington, no change. So there'll be kind of more through services, which is really good. So Crossrail will start looking like more of a thing. It's funny that I said May 2023 for final completion quite a number of years ago, and it's ended up being May 2023 for final completion. There we go. Anyway, this is interesting. We're going back to hydrogen trains again because the Scottish Hydrogen Train project. It's very much the last to leave and the first to arrive on this front because I think the most likely hydrogen train that's going to be operating in passenger service in the UK, despite this being the last one the last one testing, I think it's going to be the first one. I think it's the first one that's going to actually run because Scotland have set out a strategy within which they need hydrogen trains, and so I think this might be the first one. So despite the fact that it's the last one that's getting tested, because there are loads of other hydrogen trains that have been tested, obviously there are 3 others that have been tested before this. In fact, when I wrote a piece about hydrogen trains, I was pretty dismissive about this one because it was the last in the pile, and I said, well, it's not really anything new. nothing to particularly pay attention to. They're quite far behind because of central government, Westminster's lack of interest. The fact that the Scottish government has a plan means this one might start seeing service, which is funny to me. It's very funny. Gareth Williams, yes, that's fully agree on what you're saying there. This is funny. Anyway, you can read up on it on the internet. Alistair Dillon's written stuff up, and you can read others. Other nice, happy news: the campaign for North East Rail has made some exciting progress. They have succeeded in getting a load of cash to fund a new feasibility study, examining the proposals for new rail opening up towards Fraserburgh and Peterhead, or Peterhead and Fraserburgh. That's cool. That's exciting. I lent my voice to one of their videos as a voiceover, which hopefully you can probably access that on YouTube now. But anyway, you can now go and support. If in any way you can, go and show support. Tell your local politicians that you think this is good. So yes, I think this is good news. It's exciting. The Scottish government is on it. This is a little bit throwing money to make people think they're doing something, because the Scottish government does not want to open any more railway lines. That's still their stance. But a feasibility study examining the proposals is still no bad thing. Something is happening. Another report has been published, actually. Michelle Clark's tweet here, which is nice. Without Interlochen being a care home right now, I've no doubt about that at all. That's from Rena, who's 83, commenting on her local community transport service. Michelle Clark points out that in one sentence, Rena has summed up the importance of the incredible community transport schemes in Scotland. There's a report that's been published, and it's a report that I'd like to do a page turn of. I think I will. It's a very nice looking report, and importantly, it's looking at an aspect of transport that we don't often consider. I'm generally looking at urban transport because rural transport is... it doesn't account for nearly a sizable... it does not account for a huge amount of emissions, so it's not on the priority list. But it's still an important thing for us to think about. So I think this would be an interesting page turn to go through this report, actually. So that's the plan. I expect we will go through this report. The report of the Community Transport Associations. That should be interesting. Sorry, I just had to, yawn there because I've been talking a lot and not breathing. Meanwhile, this report is supposedly published, which is the Climate Emergency Response Group launching a new report. I don't know who this group is. I don't know what their background is in. They do have a viable website. They're saying practical immediate actions that the Scottish Government must take to avoid devastating consequences of climate change. So, that seems like their heart's in the right place. Go to the website, and they haven't published this report that they said they have, because you can't get it. So, bit of a weird one, folks. If anyone has any information about the Climate Emergency Response Group in Scotland, then let me know. What are they? They're funded by the William Grant Foundation. It all looks a little bit sus, so I'm curious to have more information. Do let me know. Let's enjoy this, shall we?
You incorrectly told your viewers there's only one train running from Manchester to London. I think that's not the case, even under the reduced timetable. It's 4 trains an hour.
A direct train?
Direct trains, yeah.
There's only 1 an hour at the moment.
All I can tell you is there are still trains running down the West Coast main line. The strikes do not enhance the situation. And
well, let's not get... I think we're getting bogged down in a detail here.
There won't be trains running.
We're getting bogged down in a detail here, but I think it matters, actually. There is only 1 direct train an hour between London and Manchester at the moment.
Well, when you're saying direct, are you saying trains that don't stop at any other...
Watch him try and work his way out.
When you say direct, are you saying trains that stop at no other stations? Because most trains stop at Milton Keynes along.
This, by the way, is why I try and discourage PR people around railways from trying to pick up on little lines that sound clever, like this is the first XYZ X1 Y1 Z1 qualifier thing. Like first of or only of, or big identifiers like this are not hugely useful. So, and they fall into the sort of trap that Grant is trying to fall into here, which is capturing. Anyway, notice that he's got notice this little Great British Railways
report.
Yes, well, they've always done.
I'm not quite clear on your definition.
The little Great British Railways report behind him. Anyway,
they've always done that. There's never been a train that's gone directly from London Euston to
So it's not
Manchester
the case
Piccadilly.
that,
That's
apart
never
from
been
on
the
strike
case.
days, which I think is where you may be getting confused here, that's not the case. There has recently been an issue where ASLEF called for action short of a strike, and 3 days later there was a 90% reduction in train drivers available to drive that route.
He's
Clearly
made that up.
coordinated,
It's not real.
unofficial action by ASLEF. Meaning that there aren't trains available. Under that reduced timetable, it went down to 4 trains an hour.
Well, I suspect we're both going to go and check our timetables to see exactly when the trains are available over the next few weeks or so.
So they should have drilled down into it further. This is why it's really important to have a super well-briefed journalist to just skewer the sort of nonsense that our special boy here, Grant Shapps, was spewing. Is this his Grant Shapps for Leader thing in the background? Is that there, or is it? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, he lied and kind of got called out for it, and you could see him squirming. He's a little worm, isn't he? Kind of moving on from that, there's not really much to say other than all of what he just said and everyone had to listen to is rubbish. So yeah, don't heed anything that Shapps was on about, because the Avanti system, Avanti's service has just collapsed. It's just totally collapsed. It's unreliable to the point where they're actually having to draft in Brexit horror himself, Jeremy Hosking, to run timetabled services with his charter trains, which, if it wasn't him running the trains, I'd love, because they're intercity branded Swallow livery trains, which is great. Except, well, also he's running the Brexit Express HST, I think, up the West Coast mainland as well. Except that he's a hateful man. He funds fascism. So, I don't feel very comfortable with the fact that he's now got a free pass. Also, as a Tory donor, he's now got a massive free pass to just run, to carry passengers, and those passengers won't realise. I find that deeply problematic. But yeah, Avanti is having a very bad time. But they did pay their shareholders $11.5 million. So, swings and roundabouts. $11.5 million is not that much money. But I think the issue is that no matter how much money it is or isn't, we're in the situation where the energy industry, the gas and electricity industry, is making, £170 billion of profits, excess profits, like just making cash, just creaming off an industry where people are, while the country is collapsing as a result of the increased cost of energy. So I think this rhetoric, I think there's an incredible surge in people being very unhappy with the idea of public services having any profit involved in them whatsoever. Rail nationalisation, ignore the fact that nationalisation is a daft thing to just shout about. It doesn't solve anything particularly. But nationalisation has always been it's always had popular support. Like, the majority of people support a publicly owned railway. So it's always been done in spite of the public rather than because of the public's interest. And I think the energy, this cost of living crisis is only reinforcing that. So it's going to be very, very difficult for us to continue to have a profit-making train operating kind of franchise or concession system. Not least is the fact that because they don't make much money, Tox may not make much, they do not make much, and they're leaving. So Abellio, the Dutch state railway, has just quit all UK rail and bus operations. They're off. They're out of there. Goodbye UK. Cheerio. It's a little management buyout, so it's going to become some internal company, some UK company. But yeah, that's it. Abellio are gone. I wouldn't be surprised if Arriva are kind of considering doing the same thing. Yeah, very interesting. Meanwhile, talking of things that Shapps is doing absolutely nothing to help, RIP Shapps. The Integrated Rail Plans Leeds study is still not started. There's kind of been a bit of discussion about it. Rob Hackerman here talking about it here, about the fact that TfN have said, well, that report is going to take at least 18 months, more like 2 years, if not more. And obviously that report will just, any report that's actually sent, we know how it works. We know how we get to Leeds by doing the thing that we just spent 15 years planning. That's how you do that. So yeah, just do lally stuff really. Oh yeah, Rishi Sunak. Do you remember him? Yeah, no, dude, Rishi Sunak. What happened to him? Anyway, here he is saying, as Chancellor, I introduced the largest cut to fuel duty in a generation. And then underneath that is a quote saying, we need to stop making life difficult for the vast majority of people across the UK who rely on a car as their primary source of transport. You haven't been Fuel duty's been frozen since 2011 or 2010 even. Where has life been made difficult for car users? What? What? I will go further so that we stop the war on motorists once and for all. I mean, this is remarkable stuff. Just what on earth? Where's he gone? Where's he gone anyway? Because obviously, yeah, he's off the case. He's gone. We don't have to worry about it. He had to change his profile from Chancellor of the Exchequer to just some MP. That's a shame for him, isn't it? What a shame for Rishi Sunak. Good riddance. But the war on motorists absolutely does not exist at all. So Brinley Heaven was pointing out some interesting points, which is that the Oxford-Cambridge Arc highway has been scrapped. East-West Rail, Bedford to Cambridge, looks like it's being put in deep freeze, if not being fully cancelled, or at least that's what Shapps was going on about. I dare say he was being put under pressure from Treasury on that one. But Bedford to Cambridge, instead of... so Bedford to Cambridge East-West Rail, put on the back burner. Bedford to Cambridge Road is getting the go-ahead. Brinley is pointing out a very key thing that we have to pay attention to. Is everyone pay attention to the Bedford-Cambridge Road, because if the railway gets cancelled and the road goes ahead, that is obscene. Right? So we all have to pay attention to that. Talking of which, here's Greens for HS2. I look Greens for HS2, I'm wearing your t-shirt. A new underground train station in Manchester, which would link trains directly from HS2 through to Bradford and Leeds, is too expensive according to the Treasury. But 1.4 billion for a roundabout is not in a climate emergency. Yeah, it's Black Cat again. It's the Black Cat A1 upgrades and associated road upgrades around it. But it is essentially 1.4 billion quid for a roundabout. Absolutely bonkers. So yeah, don't just whenever this discussion about money and about we can't afford this, we can't afford that. Remember, it's an active political choices are being made here about who they want to be. Basically, it's pork barrel politics. They're making a consideration of which thing is most likely to result in the most Conservative Party votes, and then they do that thing. Do you remember last time we had a news episode, which was only about a month ago, we were talking about the Jet Zero strategy, which we're not going to flick through because there's nothing of any value in there whatsoever. Aviation is a hilarious industry. So first off the back of that, Sarah Wilson wrote a really nice piece in Big Issue, going through what the airlines responded with about what people can do about the climate crisis. And the responses, I'm not going to go through any of them here, but it's things like, well, people should have to, you shouldn't reduce the flights because then people won't know about personal responsibility. And we shouldn't increase the prices because then people. It's just all this sort of like, no, we have to keep being able to burn the fuel and fly the people around. We have to keep doing that. We have to not be limited at all in what we do. So that's quite funny. What's also quite funny is this Bloomberg opinion piece, which appears to have been written by a private jet. After a summer of drought and record heatwaves, some politicians in France are demanding a ban on private jets. And then so that's the little like intro Twitter thing on the Twitter thread. But the headline of the piece is "Cancel private jets. Here's a better idea." I can confirm to you that the better idea is to marginally increase the cost of those flights. And the piece is hilarious. It says, okay, so increasing the cost might not stop the billionaires from flying, but that money at least can be put to a good use. Like, so no. That's why you need to ban the flights, because the rich people will always do the thing because they're rich. That's why you have to do the punitive measures so that they can't do the damaging thing. Just hand grenade all business jets. Just hand grenade them all. Blow them all up. Destroy them all. Just put them all through a chewer. Do that thing like they did to the Nimrods, where you just get like a JCB in and smash them up. Put the private jet manufacturers out of business. All that sort of thing. Good stuff. Flatten it. There's other things those skilled people can go and do. Yes, not. It's aviation. It's a hilarious industry. Very funny. It's just bonkers. Self-sustaining. Oh, right, back to strikes. UK rail strikes. The latest. This has gone on. Oh, crikey, it's 1949. Well, I thought it would. To be honest, the whole point of the episode thing will only take about 10 minutes to discuss anyway. No pay rise for striking rail staff, insists government. This is Private Eye. But the highest paid executive board member at the DfT saw their pay jump by around 12% to £190,000 last year. Wowza, that's a tasty little pay package right there. Whew, crikey. So yeah, that's Private Eye. Private Eye is interesting because it's basically a liberal magazine. So if they're kind of being pro-strike, that's indicative of a kind of public mood among the kind of the chattering, kind of maybe soft Tory leaning, Lib Dem leaning classes. Here's Aaron Bastani pointing out the data. It's actually YouGov data, which is say what you will about YouGov, pointing at breaking down support for strikes, which is support for strikes is okay. So ignore the top one because that's all of them merged together. So ignore that one. Other than the 65 plus bracket, everyone is supportive of strikes. 18 to 24, 50% or 49% supportive. 25 to 49, 45 versus 34 support versus oppose. And 50 to 64, 44 versus 41% support rather than oppose. So that bracket there, the majority, a sizable majority of people are supportive of the strikes, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Government doesn't like that, and yes, it's had a bit of blessed relief about that. But I'm hoping that there should be over the kind of this next kind of few days, there should be a bolstering of the case for striking by how much kind of rail industry workers step up when they need to. Talking about strikes, some rail strikes happening over in the US as well. We just heard about some in the Netherlands, but there's some in the US about to happen. Lots of people successfully balloting for strikes. And we're going to hear all about, more on that later, shall we say, but we'll be hearing more about the state of the US railroads next week. We're jumping around a lot because there's a few different topics to pick up. Oh, Eurostar. Eurostar winds me up. There's so many excellent people that work at Eurostar. All your Twitter faves who work at Eurostar and are dedicated, wonderful staff. Lots of time for them. They're good fun, and I'm looking forward to actually traveling on a Eurostar train when one of them is on the train, so I can say hello. However, Eurostar is managed horribly. Part of that is by the way that it was created, and it's difficult for them to shuffle out of it. But a lot of it is the management style. They treat it like an airline. It is not an airline. It is a rail service. Stop treating it like an airline. Start lobbying to get rid of the security checks that are pointless. And also, why are you taking another 2 years before you open Ashford or Ebbsfleet? Ebbsfleet and Ashford services, they are not stopping for another 2 to 3 years until 2025. That's like nearly 6 years that you'll have not been running train, or that's certainly 5 years that you won't, half a decade not serving those two stations in Kent, meaning people have to travel up to London before they get the train. That's wild. Why on earth are they doing that? Oh, it's just wild. We have considerable financial commitments following the pandemic. Yeah, you have no cash. That's. I mean, it's again, it's a bit of a political situation because it's a service that's just being ignored by the UK government. They don't like it. They don't like the fact that it exists. The border environment's toughened post Brexit, further complexity, yada yada yada. Get rid of security then. That'll help. And then you can use that spare time and the spare floor space for the additional security, for the additional checks. It's being treated like an airline, and it's not. It's a rail service, and it should be treated as a rail service. Incredibly frustrating. This is an interesting one, and I'm not just putting this up because it's Arcadis. Shout out to my employers. Hi. Obviously, I speak on behalf of myself, not of them. But I'm not just picking it because it's Arcadis, but it's interesting. So Solihull Council has instructed Arcadis to develop a research study to basically move the city centre, Solihull sort of centre, urban area, away from the reliance on... basically this sentence is an interesting one. So according to the council, increasing dependence on personally owned cars in Solihull is undermining mobility and conflicting with local policy. It's a very interesting thing for a council to say. It's fantastic. And the idea that Arcadis and TfWM, Transport for West Midlands, are going to do this trial of various bits and pieces and look to change behaviours and reduce the dependence on cars is exciting. Other consultancies, I haven't seen any other consultancies doing this explicitly an anti-car thing, but maybe that dial is shifting a little bit. Are we seeing the consultancy dial shifting? I hope so, because companies like Arcadis and lots of others still bringing a huge income from saying yes to and taking on work delivering motorways and dual carriageways. So, highway work is still prestigious and considered as such, and a lot of people work in it. And there's not a huge effort to shift government away from that. There's not a lot of lobbying going on to say, actually, you know what? Less of that. Those skilled highways people can work on other highways projects like the conversion of roads to diversion of roads to more bus, sort of dedicated bus infrastructure or active travel infrastructure. Another thing of dial shifting is the electrification dial shifting in England. So Wales and Scotland are kind of having their own slightly weird approaches to electrification, but at least they are looking to the future and doing something. England ain't. TransPennine has said wires, fine, but the general attitude is not something. But however, Network Rail have been bold enough to actually look into a plan to decarbonise the western route, the whole area that kind of not just GWI that run, but cross country and all sorts. And they've kind of split it into 5 tranches, which is interesting. This was published in Modern Railways. Thanks to Gary for friend of the show for kind of posting this on Twitter, and then I nicked it off him. But it's interesting to sort of look at those tranches and see where different lines sit and the priorities. Tranche 0 being Acton to Willesden, Temple Meads to Parkway, obviously, Chippenham East to Temple Meads, and then Didcot Oxford. So all the stuff that got cancelled out of GWEP should be put back into it again. Interesting that Tranche 2 is Bristol Exeter. That is quite interesting. So some interesting stuff, and Somerset Quarries as well. So there's an acknowledgement. This process has acknowledged the need for freight. Future RailNet are coming up looking at electrification in the north, actually, in the privatisation. Graham Harris is asking whether I agree with the tranche priority. I don't know. I've not looked at this in detail. I'm less fussed about me agreeing or disagreeing necessarily. If someone put the work in, then there has been some consensus on this, and I'm willing to trust the people who've got that consensus. If Network Rail as a Western as a route have got that buy-in, then who am I to challenge that? Like, fine, let's go. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. That looks sensible enough to me. Other people might disagree, but no, there is a consensus and a political consensus, at least internally within Network Rail, that's enabled that. So it's good stuff. Direct Didcot Oxford trains, yes, but they're not electric. Because Oxford, the railway ain't electrified to Didcot, from Didcot to Oxford. The bigger problem is, and a lot of our current challenges in terms of cost of living crisis are related to this, is that Britain is hopeless at building anything. We just refuse to do any big infrastructure. And part of that is because of the way that we followed a kind of a weird hyper-neoliberal path in the vein of the US that also can't really deliver big infrastructure. So Mike Bird has written an interesting piece for The Economist saying that Britain's not built a reservoir since 1991. We've finished a new nuclear power station since 1995. HS2 is the first new line connecting big cities since the 19th century. And this just means slower economic growth. It's not rocket science. Everyone's like, oh, Britain's got productivity growth and some challenges. But and no one ever goes, it's because we can't build anything. Well, there has been a bit of a response to this, slow and steady and misdirected, which is that government is attempting to fast-track planning to speed up major infrastructure projects. Okay, fine. There's a lot of work that needs to go into streamlining this, and there's work that I'm doing as part of that I hope to do as part of some various sort of groups within Parliament to sort of look at the way that this can be accelerated. But it's claiming projects being essential for net zero include major road building, Drax Bioenergy, and the second runway at Gatwick. So, abuse of power. This is the challenge with streamlining, is that the powers can be abused, which is, not good. And off the back of that, it kind of there's this bigger attitude of the fact that people in Britain just have this view of how much space we've got for infrastructure. As has happened with this discussion about solar power. Like, okay, we need to put more solar panels on roofs of buildings. Absolutely. But also we should be installing solar power, putting out solar farms because there's the space for it. There is the space for it. for starters, start closing golf courses and covering those in PVs. There's this interesting graphic here. Here's 1% of the total UK landmass. Within that 1% fit, in yellow here at the bottom, are the current solar panels, which is not a huge amount. What is that? That's 10% of 1%. Nearly 20% of 1% is the potential for future solar. So that's potential for future solar. 20% of that 1% is airports. There's massive amount of land used for airports. And, lo and behold, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 50% of that 1%, so 0.5% of UK landmass, is used up by golf courses. So, yeah. Until the golf courses start disappearing, we don't have a land use challenge for things like solar. Yes, developers need to favour rubbish, not fertile land, but start buying golf courses and just pay the golf course people off and just put people who want to play golf can play golf on the Wii, and they can just admit that they want to go for a walk and just go for a nice walk instead. You can do the golf stuff on the Wii, but we don't need this many golf courses, folks. There are so many golf courses, and they should be houses or solar power plants. Let's get on with it. Right, all of that discussion. It's already 8 o'clock. We've hammered through the news. We'll have a little discussion about what's next. Let's have a brief moment, a very brief moment, to talk about Ukraine, actually, and talk about this. It's a thread that was posted by Alexander Kamishin, who, I mean, it is a kind of a dramatically word. I would hope that he doesn't think he's failed. But they're just talking about the incredible infrastructure work they've been doing to get trains running through to a kind of a retaken. They're saying recently retaken Town B. I wonder if it's Izium, but they're kind of various amounts of infrastructure work going on there to kind of basically to go through and identify the things like OLE masts that have been knocked down and what else, like what else going on? Things like I'm editing on the fly, by the way, just in case you hadn't realised. I'm doing two things at once. Why am I doing two things at once? For various reasons. Don't mind me making loud noises. That's fine. I'm having very loud screaming noises coming from the computer. Don't worry about this strange critical sort of noise coming. We're just going to move on from that. Lovely. Oh, never edit on the fly, folks. When you have an epiphany midway through, don't edit on the fly. It doesn't work. Anyway, it's a worthwhile thread going through because it's quite interesting just to see sort of the pressures that are on the railways, and just like the rail effort is spectacular. It made me think another thing, which is that Ukraine really needs to just change everything to standard gauge. Much as I'd like to have, if they're going to face, westwards rather than eastwards, then my suggestion would be that it would be an absolutely worthwhile project to put everything to standard gauge. They've got bigger fish to fry, but the EU should entirely fund that. A total regauging project. Start with main lines and just totally correct the whole network into standard gauge, because Russia ain't bringing its trains in with you're bearing in mind Russian army entirely relies on trains for its logistics, or 90% relies on trains for its logistics. They're stumped if you correct everything to standard gauge. So that'll be good. Microsoft is heckling me. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, right. Oh, that's so. 35 minutes after I said I would get to it, we're going to talk about UK Rail. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Oh my goodness. Their current gauge is Russian gauge. Just in case anyone was wondering, that is their current gauge. Our special boy. Here's Portillo clearly feeling sad for him because I think it's that special moment where oh dear me, he's gone. Our special boy is gone. Shapps is gone. Woo, yeah. He's left. I've been lining up my gamer horns there beautifully. He's gone. He's gone. We've lost Shapps, our special boy. We're going to follow him very closely to see what he's doing in his life. But everything that he has done that's been dreadful, like pretty much everything he's done has been dreadful. He's going, which then calls something into question because he put his name against the results of the Williams Rail Review. He put his name against it. He made it about himself. He turned it into his own vanity project. So that's the creation of Great British Railways, which begs the question, what's going to happen to Great British Railways now that we have a new Transport Secretary? Anne-Marie Trevelyan, MP, Right Honourable, is now the Secretary of State for Transport. That's an issue for a number of reasons. Firstly, Anne-Marie Trevelyan is a climate denier. That ain't good. She's from the northeast, so potentially that maybe is a useful, favourable thing. 1p45, yes, quite grim. That's maybe favourable because she might understand the challenges of rail infrastructure towards maybe the Midlands, but actually the rail service is pretty decent down to King's Cross, so she may be blissfully unaware. Yeah, mixed bag in terms of voting record. In terms of transport, not said much on HS2, certainly not recently. And other factors. So other factors. I'm going to open this out to a kind of a bit of a discussion. So on your thoughts, Dorothea 93 doesn't agree with my Ukraine re-gauging thing. No, Iberia should re-gauge. No, Iberia doesn't need to re-gauge. But if the quickest way for Ukraine to close the door to Russia is for them to re-gauge all of their railways to standard gauge, because then no Russian trains can run on them. There's also Liz Truss here being expertly photographed with, by the weird, I mean, the photo is focused on her nose, the ring binder's rings, and the glass of water, which makes the glass of water look photoshopped in, which is really strange. Obviously, she had a big photo shoot because Liz Truss is all about photo shoots. We're going to move from government by press release to government exclusively by photo shoot, which is fab. Anyway, yeah, Liz Truss is a Prime Minister. I mean, obviously, there's this piece, which we know is rubbish. She was lying about the building Northern Pass Rail thing. But what's interesting is if she then has to get held to it, is what that then looks like. So that's an interesting factor as well. What is that outcome? Is that good? But at the same time, bearing in mind that Liz Truss is not a bright person, so she's going to have her strings pulled by, well, maybe not by this idiot because he's also not a bright person, but Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is now, by the way, has now been given a real government role, and at a time of an energy crisis, he's been given the role of Secretary of State for Climate Change, for Energy and Climate Change, which is mind explosion meme, because oh my goodness, just what on earth of a kind of an appointment is that? Just staggering. There's Greenpeace coming in and doing a nice tweet saying worst possible moment. Yeah, absolutely. So bearing in mind a lot of vampires remain with their teeth sunk into government. Also, this is an interesting bit of graphic here that I think is absolutely well worth having a look through. So this goes through all the various government departments, and it looks at the difference. So this is about this is membership of UK advisory groups. So this is talking about groups that people within these departments meet with, and the rule is like on a quarterly basis. So consistent groups that are attended on an at least quarterly basis, which are listed on UK.gov as groups. There's this is like, meetings, ministers declaring holding these meetings consistently with groups. So who are these groups? So the social sector, levelling up, quite major presence, DCMS, like culture, media, sport, yes, education, yes, DEFRA a bit, but then below housing and health and social care, so the Department for Health, we're down below 10% of social sector. The big dark colour there is private sector, and you can see DIT is huge private sector input, which is frightening. BEIS, maybe as you might expect, huge private sector input. Possibly the most worrying is that Her Majesty's Treasury, you can see where I'm going with this, which has, obviously is the most, basically has control of government. Probably about 3% social sector input, probably around 5% public sector, 5% research and think tanks, maybe 5% associations and unions. Also notice how much union input there is into the DFT. Hello, no wonder you got so many problems. And then another 5% of other, whatever that is. That means that 70% of advisory groups into Treasury are private sector. So yeah, that's not good, folks. That's really not a healthy situation to be. It's not the whole the whole reason why Treasury is a problem, but it's a factor in the fact that Treasury is a problem. So yeah. So not only do we have people like Rees-Mogg actually now genuinely having a hand on the lever of power, but also we have not changed Treasury. Treasury is still the same old Treasury. So the likelihood that Treasury are going to change tack on any rail stuff is zero. I think what's going to happen, let's go big face, shall we? To end this episode, let's go big face, because I'm going to be rolling this up in about 5 minutes. Hello, everyone. Hello. What do I think this means for transport in... what do I think this means for Great British Railways? Firstly, let's raise a drink to Shapps. Ciao for now. I think what we're going to see is a downplaying of the role of GBR. We're going to see GBR becoming a part of the DFT. I don't think we'll see... GBR is not going to become an autonomous body. There's already discussions happening within GBR about retaining Schedule 4, Schedule 8 costs. Why on earth, if we're going to have an independent, if we're going to have a unified vertically integrated system, why are Schedule 4 and Schedule 8 costs being retained? So prepare to see GBR get diluted into nothing. And what that means is that we're going to see no resolution to all of the challenges we've had as an industry since 2018 and before. So I just don't think we're going to see anything other than an additional layer of bureaucracy added, which will make things worse, not better. I have to say, I have absolutely no hope for what Treasury is going to turn GBR into. It'd be wonderful if the transition team pulled something good out of the bag. That'd be great, and I really hope they'd manage to. But I think that what was an uphill struggle for them before has now become a vertical slope facing them. With the combination of the government's self-inflicted cost of living crisis, because sorry folks, it's self-inflicted. The war in Ukraine has increased gas prices. We could have got our way around that had we not structured our entire society and our entire energy industry in the way that we have. Self-inflicted. So yeah, I think GBR is going to get watered down to become an extra layer of bureaucracy. I think to the point where I think the competition about the HQ might disappear without being mentioned again. Can you imagine that? That would be awkward, wouldn't it? I genuinely can imagine that competition might just not resurface. And if anyone does an FOI on it, they might say, thanks to the pressures of the various things that have happened recently, we've had to delay this. The cost of living crisis has changed our priorities. But I can honestly see that competition just being quietly put away. So anyway, what a depressing state of affairs. Looking forward to a forward-thinking, happy rail natter at some point soon. But it's not going to be happening imminently. Anyway, thanks for those of you who've said I've been missing Rail Natter. It is now up to date again on the audio only. I caught up. I didn't manage to get the uploads done before I went on holiday, and then I fell behind. So we have now caught up. I'm glad to say. So all of your favourite podcasting platforms. I'm a Spotify listener, but if you listen on Audible, like an Amazon-y person, or whatever the other ones are, Google Podcasts like nobody does, then you can listen to it on those mediums. Patreon.com/Gareth Dennis. Patreon is apparently sacking everyone, but it still exists. And while it does, they basically hired a load of people through the pandemic to try and make everyone use Patreon, and now they're sacking them again, which is kind of like basically the whole tech industry at the moment is just sacking everyone. Because money is real again. So yeah, patreon.com/Gareth Dennis still exists, and I, for various life reasons, I can promise you that every penny is welcome. You're all going through a tough time as well. So I seriously and genuinely appreciate every little every pound that you give is incredibly appreciated. But it allows me to. This is a little bit of joy, hopefully for some of you, but also it's a little bit of joy for me too. So you are the small contribution as an individual you make collectively allows RailNet to happen, which brings a little bit of, hopefully shines a bit of light into some interesting stuff. Patreon people, tell me, do continue to make suggestions. I know I've not been on the suggestions thing for a while, but I will be setting aside some time to go through, to trawl through and reprioritize and look at the next things that people want me to cover, because there's a load of suggestions that I've got in there that I need to get on top of. Yes. PayPal.me/Gareth Dennis, where you can just chuck loose change at me, and the Discord is at garethdennis.co.uk/Discord. There we go. Next week, hopefully live, in fact, so it won't be. It might not be a pre-record, might be live. We are being joined by the man himself, Justin Rosniak. Roz is joining us of Well, There's Your Problem podcast fame, and it's a bit of a follow-up, actually, to the last episode 132. US railroads can be bad, actually. So that should be a lot of fun. Have a nice catch up with Roz. Lovely Roz, and we'll talk. A lot of it will be talking. He's done quite a few appearances recently, talking about the problems with US railroads and the need for strike and why there's strike action in the US. And I'm genuinely really interested to hear about that. So that should be very interesting to listen to. Someone suggested there should be a trains on banknotes rail natter. They did, Gareth, and make that suggestion. Dave is asking if a live rail natter is still in the cards in Cardiff. Yes, you might have noticed that the delays in that. Various live things have meant that has been pushed back a bit. I'm hoping to do before those various live things emerge on the scene. I am hoping to get one live episode in, because then there's probably going to be unlikely that I'll get another live episode in for quite a while. I'm hoping maybe early January. It won't happen before Christmas, but maybe early January, when everyone's like, all the venues have absolutely nothing booked. I'll try and get something in Cardiff. Hopefully in the tram shed. There's a tram shed's a venue. That'd be good to go there. Anyway, that's for the future. Let's get my large face up. Everyone, I'm gonna roll it up. In theory, I'm about to go and run and be at a birthday party, but I'm gonna finish this episode up. I'm gonna wave to you all. Everyone, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a fun one. I tried. I don't know how. I know there've been an increased frequency of news ones recently, but I enjoy the news ones, and people, by the numbers, people seem to enjoy joining them. So I do enjoy the news. And if you're one of our international correspondents, send in your local news. If you're in South America, if you're in the Far East, if you have a collection of little news from your locale, send it over. I'd love to host. Thanks very much to Zandovic for being our international correspondent in the German-speaking part of Europe. So anyway, I'm going to get RSI. I'm still waving. He's waving. Cheerio! Cheerio, everyone. Cheerio.